In a fiery and controversial speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has called for an end to online anonymity. Hi, I'm Patrick Christys and this is GBN Originals. So, what's Sanchez's proposal? To link all social media accounts to a European digital identity wallet, effectively granting governments access to the real-life identities of every single user. Sanchez claims this initiative will protect democracy, combat misinformation, and hold individuals accountable for their actions online. But is this a bold step towards safety or a dangerous slide into authoritarianism? Let's break it down.
First, I propose putting an end to anonymity on social media. In our countries, no one can walk the streets with a mask on their face or drive a car without a license plate. No one can send packages without showing an ID or buy a hunting weapon without giving their name. And yet, we are allowing people to roam freely on social networks without linking their profiles to a real identity. This paving the way for misinformation, hate speech, and cyber harassment, because it is facilitating the use of bots and it is allowing people to act without being held accountable for their actions. Such an anomaly cannot continue. In a democracy, citizens have the right to privacy, not to anonymity or impunity, because with those two, social coexistence would be impossible. That is why I believe we must push forward the principle of pseudonymity as the functioning element of social media and force all these platforms to link every user account to an European digital identity wallet. This way, citizens could use nicknames if they want, but in the case of a crime, public authorities would be able to connect those nicknames to real people and hold them responsible. Because accountability is not an obstacle to freedom of speech, it is an essential complement to it. On social media user, or it's much better to say, one social media user, one real ID. This is the only way to really ensure that minors do not access inappropriate content, that people who commit crimes are banned or prosecuted from social networks, and that the millions of fake profiles that exist and influence the public conversation are removed.
Sanchez's proposal is as sweeping as it is controversial. He argues that anonymity on social media is a breeding ground for hate speech, cyber harassment, and misinformation. To address this, he suggests replacing anonymity with, tough one this, pseudonymity. Okay. Under this system, users could still use nicknames or pseudonyms online, but their real identities would be stored in a European digital identity wallet, accessible to all the authorities. Sanchez likened this plan to existing norms in the physical world. He said, in our countries, no one can walk the streets with a mask on their face or drive a car without a license plate. In his view, just as we require identification in public spaces for accountability, the same should apply online. The Prime Minister insists this measure wouldn't undermine freedom of speech, but would instead complement it by ensuring accountability. However, critics argue that linking identities to online accounts could have a chilling effect on free expression. Whistleblowers, activists, ordinary citizens who rely on anonymity to speak out against injustice may find themselves silenced by fear of exposure. Sanchez frames his proposal as a necessary step to protect democracy. We hear this all the time, don't we? We are doing this for your own protection. He says democracy needs protecting from what he sees as the dangers of unregulated social media. He claims that anonymity paves the way for misinformation, hate speech, cyber harassment. By unmasking users to the authorities, he believes these users can be tackled more effectively. He also points to protecting minors and solving crimes as being the key benefits of this system. Now, these are familiar arguments often used by proponents of increased online regulation, but critics warn that these justifications could be a smokescreen for broader surveillance and control. Sanchez's rhetoric is alarmist at times. He describes social media platforms as invaders concealed in the belly of a Trojan horse, fueling everything from anxiety and loneliness to violence and privacy violations. He even accuses social media of harming the liberal order and democracy itself. His message is clear. Social media is not just a tool, but a threat that must be confronted head on. I would politely put it to Mr. Sanchez that is this only an issue now that, dare I say it, social media is getting slightly more right-wing? But he can only answer that question himself, can't he? But Sanchez doesn't stop at individual users. He also takes aim at the tech giants who run these platforms. He refers to them as tycoons and accuses social media CEOs of concentrating power and wealth while allowing their platforms to poison democracy. There's that again, isn't there? Poison democracy. Sanchez proposes holding these executives personally accountable for their platform's compliance with laws. This approach echoes growing global sentiment against big tech's perceived lack of accountability. However, critics note that Sanchez's focus on social media ignores similar issues within traditional media outlets, which often operate with far less diversity of opinion. So look, let's just take this as an example. Legacy media outlets are easy to control. Governments of the day, especially supranational bodies like the European Union, can very easily control a narrative that is then pumped out on media channels every single day. What they struggle to control is what goes viral online, what goes viral on social media, videos that might not themselves make it onto the news bulletins at 10 p.m, but needless to say, do find their way onto people's phones. For me, is this not more about state control than it is about protecting our democracy? Another key element of Sanchez's plan is increased transparency around social media algorithms. He argues that these black boxes must be opened so that regulators can understand how content is moderated and disseminated. This aligns with existing EU regulations like the Digital Services Act, but goes further by suggesting that algorithmic transparency is essential for preserving democratic integrity. But as any regular uploader to social media will know, you can very often upload a video that's doing rather well, and then all of a sudden it mysteriously plateaus. Why? Well, because the algorithm gets blocked and slowed down, doesn't it? Is this not an attempt to make sure that the state itself can control the algorithm and therefore limit the reach of videos and content that it disapproves of? Now, transparency is genuinely seen as positive, but some worry about that potential overreach that I was just talking about there. Excessive regulation could stifle innovation or lead to unintended consequences in how platforms operate. And let's give ourselves an example, shall we? Let's imagine that there's some kind of coup in, dare I say it, Spain. And the Spanish government doesn't want the public to see that this is happening or the wider world to see that this is happening. They don't want it to be able to disseminate information that might lead to more people joining a hypothetical popular uprising. They could cut algorithms, they could have control over what videos are allowed on social media, and they could stop that from happening. Now, I would politely argue, is that actually better for democracy, or is that better for the people who are in power at the time and who want to cling on to power? Now, at one point in his speech, Pedro Sanchez revealed what might be the true motivation behind his proposals when he declared, "Let's take back control." This phrase resonates with broader global trends where governments seek greater oversight of digital spaces under the guise of protecting democracy. However, critics argue that such a measure risks tipping the balance towards authoritarianism, so precisely the opposite of the democracy that he claims to be trying to preserve. By granting governments access to users' real identities, there's a potential for misuse, whether through increased surveillance or suppression of dissenting voices. And we can see the way that this could be expressed, can't we? Going into people's direct messages, for example. So it doesn't have to just be about what they upload. It could be, who are you talking to? If me as a journalist has a particular source that might already be fearful of their anonymity being exposed, their identity being exposed, what if the government outlets are able to reach into my inbox and see exactly who I've been talking to? That would be a problem, would it not? Unsurprisingly, Sanchez's proposals have sparked heated debate. Supporters argue that linking identities to online accounts could deter bad actors from exploiting anonymity while creating a safer digital environment. And there definitely is a bit of that, isn't there? Online trolls and bad actors can very easily hide behind a fake account and pump out whatever they want, especially in the world of deep fakes. And that is a problem. No one can say that isn't a problem. It is. But is it really necessary now to actually clamp down on everyone because of those few people? On the other hand, of course, opponents warn that these measures could infringe fundamental rights, privacy, freedom of expression. Digital rights groups have expressed concern about self-censorship among users who fear repercussions for expressing unpopular opinions. There's also alarm over the potential for increased government surveillance in an era where data security is already under threat. And I put it to you, who will be happiest with this level of increased online security? Would it not be totalitarian regimes? Look at Iran, for example, or dare I say even Turkey, where if there's any dissent or political opposition or the potential to try to whistle blow about something that's been going on, then actually that could mean that the state can get in there first and shut it down. There's also another important aspect, and this has been highlighted, I think, by the grooming gang scandal that we've had here in Britain very recently. A lot of those victims are victims of sexual assault and sexual abuse, and their anonymity is absolutely paramount, but they are also under great threat. A lot of them still live under threat of their attackers and their abusers. They would need to be 100% confident that their anonymity was protected online if they were to come forward. So you've got people there who live under despotic regimes wanting to blow the whistle. You've also got the survivors and victims of things like domestic assault and domestic abuse. Would they not suffer as a result of the exact laws that Sanchez wants to bring in? So Pedro Sanchez's call for an end to online anonymity represents a pivotal moment now in this ongoing debate about technology's role in society versus our personal freedoms. While his intentions may stem from a desire to protect democracy, let's just take him at face value, and he wants us to be safe from threats posed by social media, the execution of these policies must be approached with severe caution, and I would argue skepticism as well. Anonymity has long been a cornerstone of freedom of expression in democratic societies. If the rulers of the day have nothing to hide, then they have nothing to fear, do they? It allows individuals to speak truth to power without fear of retaliation, whether they're whistleblowers exposing corruption or ordinary citizens showing dissenting views. Stripping away this protection risks creating an environment where only the most privileged voices can afford to speak freely. Now, European leaders are preparing to discuss these proposals at an upcoming meeting, and they must grapple with complex questions about safety versus freedom, accountability versus privacy. The decisions made now will shape not only how we interact online, but frankly, the very nature of democracy in the digital age. For now, though, one thing is clear: Pedro Sanchez has thrown down the gauntlet in a battle over online identity, and the world will be watching very closely what happens in the next years. Just in terms of the World Economic Forum as well, one of its major criticisms is that this is a platform for global elites to meet, to discuss together about how they can control our lives more. And again, I would politely suggest to Pedro Sanchez that isn't he just perpetuating that stereotype now with these kind of proposals? Well, look, you can make of that whatever you will. I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GBN Originals. Please make sure that you give this video a like and you subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much.